Got it. Okay. I think we have four panelists here. One, Mr. Ravi Shankar. He's a chartered accountant, company secretary, cost accountant, RV, law graduate. He's an experience of more than 35 years with us, and he's been in the leadership position as a CFO in various groups. Thank you, Mr. Ravi Devarakonda, to be part of this panelist. Mr. Subbaraidu is a CPA, CITP, CISA certified, ACMA, MBA, RV, CPI, SIMR. He's also a founder with 20 of Enterprises Consulting, is a consulting, and 25 years of experience in various functions and in corporate finance and IT roles. He has experience. Mr. Subbaraidu, thank you for being here. Mr. Vikas Suresh, SIMA and a chartered accountant, founder and director of Unithos Business Advisors, extensive experience in financial analysis, business strategy, and auditing. Thank you, Mr. Vikas. And Mr. Rajeshwar Rao is a company secretary, is a registered valuer, has complete experience practicing company secretary, and he has worked in multi-state company secretaries firm. Thank you, Mr. Rajeshwar Rao, for being here. We require your guidance for us to understand some of the interesting questions that are up with us, and hopefully we'll all end up learning new things at the end of this session. So I shall begin with the couple of questions that we have with us. First one is typically a startup question. So I would raise this question to Mr. Subbaraidu. A startup which has an idea and the board of directors of the company where there's no capital, it's a new investment, new company totally wants to have the investor coming at a particular amount which is at premium, and the investor is ready to do it. Okay.
Ramani sir, can you share that screen also?
I'm waiting for the document from Vijaya. That's the reason.
I will share.
Yeah, which question number is this?
Okay, it's there. Okay.
Question one.
Question one, the first question. Okay.
Vijaya, if you can give me the document, I'll share the screen.
Sure, sir.
Shared already.
You need to go to the first page.
Yeah, first page. Go to first page.
Okay.
First page and question number. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
You want to read all the entire question? Okay.
No, it's okay. I have the physical copy. I'm carrying the one that we got during the physical session at the. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah. I just want to. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so for the benefit of others, I think you're reading.
Yeah.
That's so. See, essentially, if there is a company which has just been set up and it is getting a premium from a willing investor, because of the certain projections, how do you go about it? Is the question. Where you go? Who is scrolling down?
No, sir. Sorry. Okay.
Average fee cash flow 25 lakhs for the next 5 years. Okay. Mr. Tinku of the company has just incorporated and that will be valued based on net asset value of 10 rupees per share. That's the one, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. And this is SME Products Private Limited. The company's paid up capital is 1 lakh because okay. So although in this question nothing has been mentioned about what is the business that the company is in.
Consider it is an IT sector.
IT sector, okay.
IT sector.
Yeah, so I think valuing an IT company based on net asset value is just not acceptable, because primarily the value of information technology related companies comes from the capability of its individuals, and perhaps if it's a product company, also the IP that they have created. So definitely valuing based on NAV would not be in line. Then the question is, then how do you go about valuing it? Okay. It all depends upon what stage of operation it is in. Say, for example, if it's only an idea, okay, and nothing has been created as yet, then primarily the value of such a company, if you look at, the startup valuation methods, primarily the value would be derived from who the leadership team is, what is their past experience, have they created such companies in the past as well, their profile, number one. And secondly, the nature of its relationships with perhaps its sellers and its on one side, and perhaps tying up for sources of input from the other side, vendors and customer relationships. So if the company has already tied up with certain other companies to sell its product, once the product is ready, those kind of relationships that it already has, contractual relationships, those would be another big source of value. Okay, so relatively speaking, any income approach or asset-based approach where the assets are derived from those assets that are there on the balance sheet, recorded in the books of account, would not be suitable. If at all, the market-based approach would, I think, be relatively more suitable, although it is difficult to find companies or transactions that have taken place of similar companies in the past. But one would be advised to look at a transactions database like Bloomberg or Reuters, and see if companies who have been in that particular space, particularly the product like the one that this company is into, if those companies, that would be the preference number one, right? If say, for example, let's take the example of a company which is getting into, let's say, quantum security, right? So quantum computing and cyber security related products, right? If there are similar companies who have built similar products like that, and if any funding rounds have taken place, and in those funding rounds, similar companies have been valued at a certain level, I would perhaps look at those as the benchmark to value this particular company, number one. That would my approach be.
Sir, good morning.
Yeah.
Sir, I would like to give little clarity in this issue. In this case, can I?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, I wanted to say, when a company is incorporated, subscribers, they'll go for a shares around 100 rupees nominal value. In this case, company started in the May. Now we're in the 3 months. There are only 2 shareholders. They not started any operations. So now what are the question? This question projected by me only. Projections is given only Excel projections. So company to create the value, they need to have assets, liabilities, IPR. They're not in any operation. They're not recruited any employees, just in a paper company. In case had they applied along with the subscriber, they would have got 100 rupees. Now also between May to August, no value is created. Just only 2 directors are there. They're to start. It is in the first investment. So from that point of view, company has got only 1 lakh. Out of 1 lakh, they spent 20,000 rupees in corporation, 80,000 rupees cash bank balance. My straight, simple, very question is, without going to the funda, had they become subscribers in the May, they would have got 100 rupees. Now also, since no value is created, they says I'll give only 100 rupees.
Yeah.
So because of projections, nothing is created. So under the
understood, Mr. Chandrasekhar. So what you essentially are saying, I think Mr. Subbaraj also, but so what the question that you're saying is, if I just start up a company, but my expertise which I have in the behind, so I don't have any contracts, I don't have any IPR, but I had industry experience of so many years.
Exactly.
And I am based on my industry experience, I say that I'm able to start a new business with that experience and project it. Will I be able to get a premium from any willing investor? I think that's the principle, Mr. Subbaraj.
Yeah, as I said, possible, but one has to look into the background. Yeah, I think Vikas, Suresh, you wanted to come in.
I would like to ask Mr. Vikas.
Sir, excuse me, I am Ramji from Chennai, sir. I would like to add a point. This 3 months, he says they have not added, but they have added leads, customer leads and all. The company name is registered in the customer's mind and all. I mean, future customers. So that has a value.
Okay, so we heard, I think we'll ask Mr. Vikas, take these inputs and can you please give your perspective, please?
Thank you, Ramani. Thank you, team. Good morning, first of all, to all of y'all. See, on this specific point, we have evolved from being a typical regulatory startup environment to a more matured startup environment here, because we are seeing a lot of serial entrepreneurs doing startups one after the other. Which is where, if you had asked this question, a couple of years back, traditionally, startup valuation we used to do only as a corporate entity standalone basis. So, like what the team has been deliberating on, saying that if there is an early stage company, then you start with an NAV process. You start saying slowly what they have built up, and then you take the valuation of the company from there. Because typically that is how the process was evolved. But now what has happened is, just as an example, Flipkart's promoters from Myntra side as well as from Flipkart side have started a new venture. So on day one, the investors know that they are going to build a unicorn.
Correct.
So it's not the point, while the company, the corporate entity is a newly formed entity, but there is already value being brought to the table. That value includes their management value, that includes their prospects. So every valuation has three blocks. One, what it has created so far. So that block is 10 rupees, I agree, because there is nothing in the company which is created so far. Second is the block of investment or funding which is going to come into the company. So that is the value of the funding which is going to come. Here, 200 lakhs would be the value of 200 lakhs only. But there is a third block that if anybody gives me 200, now 200 is a commodity. Now Axel can give me 200, or TPG can give me 200, or 314 can give me 200, or Blackstone can give me 200. Anybody can give me this 200 lakhs. But this 200 lakhs can create another, say, 250 lakhs of valuation. That is the block which we are saying that in today's world, depending on the management who has brought this new startup, that 250 which we are saying, the additional block is already established. So we tend to give a premium to management team who are serial entrepreneurs. You can elaborate that, because these people come with a level of promises, with a level of credential which the investors are comfortable with. Hence, there is a justifiable background to the management. I would be very comfortable taking a valuation, which is the first block, 10 rupees, which has been a startup, plus the third block, which is value being brought in by the management team. However, as an investor, as a valuer, I would clearly caveat that this valuation is mainly dependent on the team who was joined in, and hence the valuation underlines the continuation of the team.
So in other words, essentially, thank you, Vishwika. In other words, what we are saying here is there is an intangible asset of the expertise of the management. So whenever we're valuing such startups, what we are actually valuing the intangible asset, which is the expertise here. And that's why the premium is justifiable if you were to value that intangible asset. So I think the approach is more like an intangible asset valuation to justify the premium there.
We need to add one more point for this, because
yes, please.
One should take care of that 5627B of the income tax valuation also, because suppose tomorrow the expected premium is not achieved, then the income tax department will come after the LRTs as a gift, as a income from other sources.
But since I know, while I'm extending this, Mr. Ravi Devarkonda, that is a good perspective. See, typically when you do such startups and you are trying to value intangible asset, hoping that you will achieve certain numbers, things can go wrong. So is it so rigid, and income tax will just look this in, or they will accept because of the valuer's report and detailing that one is there?
If they get a chance, why will they leave? Definitely. Then you have to go and convince him. That's a different issue, but one should be mindful of that. That's what I can say.
Understood, sir. Understood. So, sir, Mr. Devarkonda, since you're there, sir, I would like you to take up the second question. While calculating free cash flows, the company has...
This is Kusum here. Can I just interrupt and slightly modify this question? The first question itself, can we just spend a few more minutes on this question?
Okay, I think this is just the beginning. I'll allow that question right now. Please go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I mean, I just want to slightly modify the facts of this case only. Let us assume this company is, 1 or 2 years into business, and the only customer that it has only one customer, say a foreign customer which has been giving business. Now, when that foreign customer now intends to, acquire this company, so and the promoters are willing to transfer the shares. It's the same, A and B who are willing to transfer the shares. Now, in this case, what would, and of course, there will be other things. The A and B will continue to become employees. They'll be a part of the management. They'll get paid.
Okay.
They're shifting from promoters to say and
Okay.
subject to those clauses. Now, in that case, what should be the value of the company? Because at the end of the day, it is, there no doubt there is a intangible asset that the company has created. Whether in such case, whether an NAV method is a better approach, or whether we should still look for a market value or
I think, Kusum, I think I'll take again help of Mr. Vikas to conclude this, but quickly, I think we should always not mix up. We should just go independently about the value. The value is still about the company, and the company has intangible assets of the expertise, and that is what is being valued. Now, NAVs are typically the last preferred choice, except for the regulatory requirement, because otherwise the intangible asset itself will not be there, because in the case of intangible asset, there is nothing called as an NAV concept. So here we should go principally valuing first the right method, where irrespective whether foreign investor is exiting, this guy is going to be there or not. Suppose if the key people who have been there are leaving, then the intangible asset is not there. Otherwise, it is there. So principally look at whether asset is there or not. Mr. Vikas, would you like to just conclude on this part of what Kusum has asked?
But
Yeah,
I just want to also add one dimension to that. So if we see, company is a different person from the individuals, right? That is all, it's a settled concept. So, and the company in this case is having a contract or an arrangement only with one customer, which is the foreign customer. Now, if the foreign customer actually, backs off, it is a challenge for the promoters to, or the people who are running the company to go into the market and get new contracts of, because
Yeah,
they
I
have.
understood. Kusum, that's part of the riskiness of the asset, right? Yes, Mr. Vikas.
Sure. Thank you, Ramanit. Kusum, question well taken. See, always whenever we are doing these kind of valuations, especially startup valuations, please think a method which is with and without.
Yes.
Then you apply whatever you want from a presentation point of view, or a conclusion point of view, or your analytics point of view. With and without has worked always for me. So if you are saying element by element, this team, if the team was there versus team was not there, would the valuation be the same? Would your number be the same? Second, investor, yes or no? If it is very, very specific that other than this, no other investor will invest, then I have an additional riskiness in the projections, because other than this, there is a strategic value of investor coming in the picture. Because if, for example, if Walmart is not there, Walmart was not there, then the number of investors for Flipkart or takers for Flipkart might have been less. So you may want to see that always whenever you get this, first think with and without. And then if you have doubts within that, with and without, that is it for the promoter, is it for the investor, is it for the technology they brought in? Please do that with and without for each attribute, and then you conclude whether NAV is applicable or DCF is applicable or whatever is applicable. That is my view.
I think that sums up. So essentially, detail the assets and evaluate the assets. I think that's the summary because you have given to us. Fantastic. Kusum, hopefully that answers.
Yes, thank you.
Only thing is, Mr. Subbarao is extremely upset with me because I've just taken for the first question a very long time. So I hope to move a little fast in the entire to take up, but we'll not miss up the core aspect of not learning the part. So can I request Mr. Ravi Devarkonda to help us out on the second question? The company has negative cash flows.
Actually, second, third questions were already considered in the Manthan.
Acha, can I go?
Can someone help me to tell me what which question should be taken up? Whoever were in Manthan.
See, this document is being shared by someone else. I've requested.
Sir, I'm scrolling. Just okay.
Can I have that document for me in the chat box? I can share the screen so that I can scroll down if required. which question Shilpa has been completed in Manthan?
No, we'll
Till-
continue that, Shilpa. There's no problem. Because
Yeah,
there are
actually,
new
we
members
completed
also.
quite a few of them. Yeah, right.
You've dealt? Okay. Then since I was not part of Manthan.
Sir, I
Yeah.
think till 5th point we completed, sir.
Till 6th point? Okay. So we start with 6. Does that help everyone? We'll start from 6 then. Okay. This question I would like to.
Remani sir, I just had one request. Is it possible to take those questions which were discussed in Manthan, because not everybody was present in the Manthan?
Yes,
I'm
please.
just requesting.
No, if
Yeah. What we
time
will do,
permits,
Mr.
we will come back.
Mr. Prakash, what happens is there are some audience who have already been part of Manthan already. Some were not
Yeah.
there. So what we will
Okay.
do is we'll start with the remaining questions and we'll come
No
back.
worries.
And
No
we'll try
worries.
to also moderate if we'll see if we can speed up a little. But essence is that we have to understand the question. The intention is to be done. 6th question, I would like you, to, Mr. Ravi Shankar, to help us out. While
Yeah.
calculating market rate of return, we compare BSE listed companies data of similar companies. What is the accepted practice? Is it 5 years data or 10 years data? Any other sources for comparison? I would like it to be also added up from the regulatory perspective. If we are using this method and submitting for a regulatory purpose, how do they perceive also, if you can give a perspective?
I remember this question also was dealt with there, because what I understand is that what I remember was the discussion was also there. BSE
Yeah.
from 1990 onwards will take it for the calculation purposes. That's what we discussed in the meeting.
Okay.
Or NSE from the date of inception. That was because that will cover the both ups and downs of the full period. Plus, there was also discussion on with yield, without yield. I don't remember the correct method, but somebody can.
Yeah, correct. I think what Anjan Babu had mentioned is not only should you consider the yield on the BSE Sensex for maybe 30, 32 years, but on top of that, add dividend yield so that
Dividend yield
you
also.
adjust the returns earned from both capital appreciation as well as income inflows by way of dividends. So,
And he was saying that Yahoo Finance gives that kind of a data.
Correct. I do remember last. But
what it is.
here I would like to add one more query here, Mr. Ravi Shankar. What about the risk-free rate? Suppose if you were to take 30-year data for a NSE to calculate the market equity risk premium, risk-free rate, will you take a 30-year data or a 10-year data?
So risk-free rate, there is no specific thing, but the general practice is to take the 10-year bond yield and all.
So if that is the case, is the tenor for different parts of the same equation, are we not changing it? Will it have an impact?
we should actually, which depends upon the duration of the project. If the project that I am evaluating is a 15-year project, then as we had discussed this also at Manthan, the risk-free rate for a equivalent 15-year bond should be considered. So the duration of the project and the duration of the risk-free rate tenor that we're looking at should be close to each other.
So
There's no
just to, sorry, sir. Please, sir.
So there's no specific thing, but is it generally what I would see? There's no, as we all know that there's no specific formula for any of these things. It's more of a practice. So there are people who are taking 10 years risk-free bond rate as a risk-free rate, and there are people, as you said, no, depending on project wise, you have to change the methodology.
Interesting. So I think I'll also try to bring in here Mr. Vikas. The same question, little tweaking here. If we are taking a 30-year data to capture the entire ups and downs to calculate the equity risk premium, but if you were to take as a market practice, as Mr. Ravi Devarkonda saying, say 10 years of liquidity instrument, okay, for the risk-free return, especially for the CAPM model, are we not having a mismatch in the tenor? And if you were to, when we are deciding RF, the second part of the question is, are we at a risk of looking at liquidity risk in that RF? Kindly, please, Mr. Vikas.
Okay. Thank you, Ramani, again for the question. See, one step back on the market return, what are we trying to do? We are trying to project the business cash flows from the date of valuation till perpetuity. Hence, the market return has to be a semblance of a return over the investors can expect over a very long period. So in, again, this is a limitation of data. Otherwise, the longer the history you have, the longest history you take for the market return. In India, we have, since like how you said, 91 onwards is when we have the data when market opened up. So there also you might have some aberrations in between because of some scams or because of some .com burst, and in between there are some time pockets when you have that aberrations. You need to smoothen out the aberrations and see over the longest period of history what is the return the equity investor is getting. So 30-year period is a 30-year period, 20-year period is a normal acceptable norm. If you look at developed markets like US and all, where 40, 50, 60-year data is also available, we actually tend to take that. Because we are saying this is the return expectation of the investor from the valuation date till perpetuity. We are looking at historical data only to support us, saying that, okay, you have earned so much in the past, you will typically earn so much in future. That's one. Second, coming to the risk-free rate of return. See, this risk-free rate of return is again a limitation from a data point of view. What we want to say is what is the next best available risk-free option for the investor. In India, the best option available is a 10-year government bond. We do not have government bonds beyond 10 years. Hence, we take 10 years, saying that the risk-free investment which we have is only 10 years. If you see the same thing when we are doing valuation of US companies, US has 20-year treasury bills. So we take 20 year for US. So you take the longest period of risk-free bonds available to be a proxy for the risk-free return. There is an aberration in times because, one you're taking 30 years, one you're taking as 10 or 15 years. But globally, this is an acceptable norm because what we are saying RF here is the risk-free instrument. So there is an element of, like how you said, the timing gap between the risk-free and the market return, which gets factored into the risk premium itself. So if you're waiting for a longer period, there is an additional risk which is captured in the market return. And that is an acceptable norm. We have been filing even with the regulators. There's absolutely no challenge so far on that.
Okay. That helps, Vikas, Mr. Ravi. Thank you. Can I ask Mr. Rajeshwar to help us? Can you scroll down to the 7th question, please? Mr. Rajeshwar, can you pick up the 7th question?
Yes,
ABC has 2 directors and shareholders. They have obtained valuation report from Mr. X valuing fair price as 1800 rupees per share. Later, it is found that share is worth only 200 rupees per share, and the projections provided are inflated numbers. One of the director would like to claim damages from the valuer. Can he succeed? If not, who can claim damages from the valuer? Mr. Rajeshwar.
okay.
More a compliance question.
Regarding this question, before getting into give a answer on this, starting with our engagement letter and ending with management representation letter, before signing our report, we need to be careful and cautious. Those 2, engagement letter and MR letter, will protect us from here, because when company is giving projections, we assume that it is between directors, it is discussed and they approved and gave it to us. It should not happen that like they are giving, like one director is giving without the knowledge of the other director. So in our engagement letter or management representation letter, we need to mention clearly saying that these projections, in case provisional financials, if any, has been placed before the board of directors. Board of directors have approved and provided to the valuer before he is giving his report. Then valuer is safeguarded. If valuer has not taken this kind of management representation letter, then he is into little bit risky. But nevertheless, if emails have come from directly from the one of the directors or promoter, based on that he has done his sensitivity analysis and arrived at a value of 1800. Later, the second director is coming and saying that it cannot be projection. Suppose say 1000 crores sales they have given. He says that it cannot be 1000, it will be only 500 crores. He can safeguard based on the emails. If he's getting emails or something from a consultants who are approaching him to give valuation, then he's at risk. My answer to this twofold. One is if he's taking proper management representation letter and getting all the information from the promoters or directors, they cannot claim the damages from him. If he's getting from consultants, then he's at risk. And second thing, who can claim the damages? That also in our caveats and limitations, we can clearly mention that it is given for specific purpose. And in case there is a negligence on the part of, or there is some kind of fault from the part of valuer, he is responsible only to the company or promoters. If we put that kind of limitation or caveat in our report, no one else can claim against us. This is my answer.
So, thank you, sir. I'll also take the same question again to Mr. Ravi Shankar. The perspective that Mr. Rajesh has given, if you can add a perspective, wherein is there an obligation on the registered valuer to do a reasonable amount of due diligence? And if that is not done, can the company's director itself claim? One is IBBA or some third person asking for damages. Second is the director of the company itself seeking damages. I'm just asking you to be specific on that. Yeah, please.
See, whatever management gives, we can't take it at face value, because that is the stand, then the evaluation is decided by the management. Okay, so that's not correct. It's our duty to do a sensitivity analysis of it, whether the market is supporting that kind of a projections and the discount rates, all these things we should take care. Okay, in fact, now in this case, we'll bring to you other this one. Recently, there is a Kingfisher goodwill valuation. Therefore, initially one set of values have done some 5,000 crores valuation. Another set has done some, I don't remember the numbers, but it is exorbitant valuation. Against which banks have given a loan also against their goodwill. Now the banks are after the valuation company for the damages. So definitely, when a valuation report is given, the valuer has to justify his stand. And he should take sufficient precautions. Then he can defend. Now we can't avoid a case. We can definitely defend.
Okay, he can be pulled up. You're saying now
Definitely
what will happen is that if he can be
See,
pulled
that's
up.
what I said. No, see, even if you see the other income tax angle, tomorrow if this kind of thing happens, income tax also will come after him. It is not after the valuer, but in that case, okay, definitely those direct, the person who got the allotment, no, he'll get the.
Yeah. See,
other sources.
I'm just trying to bring in a little perspective. I think the valuer's obligations is from the part of valuer's code of conduct, and the regulatory authority which actually drives that. I mean, to which it is registered. In this case, IBBI. So whatever punishments or such things can be taken is largely by IBBI. No third party can take directly on the valuer, in my view, also.
No, Section 247 itself provides for certain these things, no?
Go ahead, sir.
I don't have that readily with me, but Section 247 that where the value appointment section that is there, that itself says about some liability. That's what I remember.
Yeah, I think again.
I don't remember. Please,
yeah. See, for like for auditors who have this, privity of contract kind of a defense for them available. Valuation is also still, although it's a mix of science and art, there are professional standards. The whole thing revolves around whether the auditor can defend himself by saying that he has not deviated from professional standards. Okay, yeah. Whether there is, it's all boils down to an issue of negligence or gross negligence. Okay, and if it can be proven in a court of law that the valuer, like an auditor, has deviated from, has not shown adequate due diligence, or has deviated from the professional standards, the chance of any liability or anybody suing him cannot be ruled out. It is only a question of whether the valuer, while doing his work, had reason to believe that other parties besides those parties who actually appointed him would be relying on his work to arrive at certain decisions. Okay. Yeah. If that can be proven in a court of law, definitely the privity of contract kind of a clause can be ignored, and a court can perhaps come to the view that yes, the whole issue is there any negligence? Is there any gross negligence? Yeah. If yes,
let me read from the Section 247, subsection 3. If a valuer contravenes the provisions of this section or the rules thereunder, the valuer shall be punishable with fine, which shall not be less than 25,000 rupees, but which may extend to 1 lakh rupees. Provided that if the valuer is contravening such provisions with the intention to defraud a company, he shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year and with a fine which shall not be less than 1 lakh rupees, but which may extend to 5 lakhs rupees. Further, where the valuer
No,
has been
Ravishankar sir,
convicted.
Ravishankar, see, we are talking about defrauding. Assume for a
Right.
moment that there is no intent to defraud. Okay. See, negligence and fraudulent are two different things that we're talking about. Okay. Okay. If it is fraudulent, no doubt the law will take care of it. The question
No,
is,
sir, what you're saying is if a valuer contravenes the provisions,
yeah.
then itself there is a smaller amount of fine. When they fraud, larger amount of fine.
Correct.
And where a value has been convicted in subsection 3, he shall refund the entire remuneration received, pay damages to the company or to any other person for loss arising out of incorrect or misleading statements.
Yeah.
So
And I don't know whether we may also want to look at although valuation profession is a recent entrant in India, we can also take a look at certain case laws. Okay, if there have been any case laws where people have proceeded against valuers, and we can also look at the body of case laws to decide further. But prima facie, can you prove negligence or gross negligence is the first question.
Yeah,
Right.
I think understood. I think we have taken that question. So the thought that has come in is it's not about whether valuer can be penalized. In this question specifically said whether a fellow director can do it. So I was thinking about the locus standi of that. Having said that, whether valuer to be punished, yes. But who can take up the case? That is function of whether it's a regulatory authority will take up or whether any third party can take up. Whether a fellow director can also take up, I think that's a question this was asked, but we'll take it up. But principally, we understood that yes, valuer can be penalized if he has not done the proper due diligence.
Principal answer is yes,
Yeah,
it can be.
that's the messaging we got from here. That answers. So taking it further, see the questions are both regulatory and technical. So I'm trying to divide the questions, and if any particular speaker feels that it's more regulatory, would like it to pass on to another speaker, kindly help me on that. The next question is purely a regulatory. So I will again take it up to Mr. Ravi Devarakonda in terms of the relative parties and whether this covers. It's a straight question. Can you help in this, Mr. Ravi Devarakonda? Valuer is I'll read out the question while you are trying to think about it. As per section 247D, valuer not undertake valuation of any assets in which he has a direct or indirect interest or becomes so interested at any time during a period of 3 years prior to his appointment as a valuer or 3 years after the valuation of assets was conducted by him. Here the interest direct or indirect means value or his relative should not hold any securities. The following issues. Mr. A, valuer is secretarial auditor of the company, or Mr. A is a valuer is rendering support services on an assignment basis. Does it come under 247D?
My view is that secretarial auditor definitely comes under that.
Okay.
Valuer rendering support services in case he's the general trend, there is an understanding of all these independence is that my income from that company should not be more than 10% of my overall income. Suppose I'm earning 1 lakh per annum. So my income from this company should not be more than 10%, which means that I'm wholly depending on it. That's my view, but I'm subject to correction.
I'll also take it to Mr. Rajesh. Do you also support the same thing, sir?
Sir, I have different view. My view is broader sense. First one is secretarial auditor, definitely, because both secretarial audit as well as assignment, it will be impacting your independence.
Correct.
Regarding supporting on assignment basis, suppose you're giving certain services to a company, so you have close interactions with the promoters and directors or key managerial personnel. There is a element of saying that you may be biased. Better to avoid.
Fantastic. Correct. I completely agree with you, sir. The prudence is that you should be acting as they say that you should look at more conservative approach. Even if there is a slightest amount of bias that could be generated, don't go by the technicality, avoid that, and you should not prefer to do such assignments. That's the way I would look at it. Otherwise, the onus of obligation to prove that there is no bias comes on the valuer any which ways.
Can I?
Yes, please.
So actually, what discussed now is more of independence and also code of conduct. That is the principle, sir. But if you see section 247 is regular way says direct or indirect interest. Now, interest in the sense where assuming that if the valuer is also holding a shares of a company, where he is having interest in the company. Indirectly means where his relatives are holding. So I think according to me, section clearly says it is a regulatory prohibition on a securities in which he is being valued, because if he is valuing anything more and higher, if he is a security holder, it is impacting directly. So according to me, in section 2.7, both the people can do the valuation, but however, as an independence, as other principles, secretary auditor cannot value. So I would like to bring very important thing that here the word is interest, not independence. So section 2.7 holds only an interest within the shares or securities. That's my view, sir.
I mean, that's a new element of perspective. It's that you are limiting only to shares or securities. I think, but I think we heard that.
Actually, sir, 1 minute. If you see the word also, before or after 3 years, see, it means that 3 years I should not have interest. Next 3 years also I should not have interest. So that 6 years ban on secured interest. The interest is only, I think, some of the letters also read. This is an where he is having shares of securities. So otherwise, when secretarial auditor if is working, assume that current year, last year I was secretarial auditor. Next 3 years, I don't think I've been have any interest. As like a concurrent cannot happen. Assuming that 2021 I am a secretarial auditor, I resign. Next year I can take up assignment.
Sir, we heard that, sir. I think the principle, see, it's up to the value. The principle is essentially what Mr. Rajesh Rao is also saying right now, is the bias part of it. So if you are able to handle that, and if you're able to do it, ideally one should act as the element of caution. That's the principle of all these regulations. If you are going by technicality, the jurisprudence is always saying that one has to look at the intent and substance rather than mere wordings. There have been enough case laws on that. So one has to be playing the element of caution.
One more thing I can say is that if you can be independent director of that company, you can be valuer of the company. So anyway, for independent director, what are the requirements that is anyway given? That for 3 years you should not be associated with the company, you should be employee of the company. All those things are there. So ideally, that's best.
The reference could be the independent director. That's a good one actually.
They're actually a given detailed calculation.
Yeah, Sanjay. Hi, Sanjay here. I mean, going on the technicality bit of it, it's also saying the valuer appointed under subsection 1 shall not undertake valuation of any asset in which he has direct or indirect interest. So I think it's more coming from a land and building, plant and machinery valuer. Maybe from that perspective, they're saying that if I had an interest in a land, I cannot value that land again after 3 years. Or maybe if I have sold a plant and machinery to a person. From a financial asset perspective, yeah, if I had held the shares 3 years back and then now I'm valuing it, that's prohibited. But me rendering services per se will make me interested, will be a question mark, because they're saying not to undertake valuation of any asset in which he has a direct interest. It's very clear. The intent of law is that I should not have interest in the asset which is getting valued. And it's not about the company for which I'm working, correct? So, I mean, I would like to throw it open for discussion to others also.
Because, sir, you have a view on this? Let's open.
Yeah, I'll go more with experience than with regulatory interpretation here. See, when we are talking about direct, indirect interest, that interest has to conflict with my services. When I say that, we are talking about secretarial audit. If that secretarial audit or any of the work which is being performed gets into a self-review as part of my valuation exercise, gets within the purview of my valuation exercise, that itself qualifies to be an interest. Holding security is a direct conflict. I don't think we have any doubt on holding securities. Yeah. Now, holding any employment position or any kind of position where your own role would have been a question. You are looking at historical 3 years. In any one of the 3 years, you are the CFO of the company. Obviously, it's an interest of conflict. You will tend to, not give the right picture.
Therefore, the principle, what Mr. Vikas you're saying again is, which is that if there is an element of bias that could creep in for the perspective of valuation, you should avoid it.
Yes.
Correct.
And that's the principle here. Don't go by technicality, and I think that's a summary there.
So actually, for the benefit of members, I'm very strongly agree. This 3 years of security is only applicable to securities. Assuming that there is a he was an employee, he was a CFO, he was resigned 2 years before. 3rd year, when he is started independent practice, and he has no interest, he was only employee 3rd year. According to me, he can take up subject to independent code of conduct.
Yeah, now, Mr. Chandrasekhar, understood, sir. What we are saying is absolutely fine. If you believe that there is no element of bias. These laws are made from an element of bias should not creep in perspective. If you believe that you had no bias which can generate, which can creep in into your valuation perspective, yeah, you can take it. I think that's the summary we are talking.
Yeah, I think let's not get unduly
Yeah.
fixated on the word interest alone. Interest is not restricted to shareholding alone. That's my view.
Sir,
There is a deliberate intent
No,
of the
sir,
legislature.
Will,
when they said
shall we move
interest.
on? So we
No,
shall
no,
move
sir,
on
one
to the
minute.
next.
Yeah,
Sir, 1 minute, this being very important, I would like to beg to differ. I would like to acknowledge interest in which he has a direct indirect in which asset is bank valued. I think according to my little the small opinion, it has to be only asset, as you said, land, building, as financial assets, sir. You can take it up, but I think for the benefit of member, they can look at it.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
I think Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Ramani, sir, last one point. Okay, in my opinion, okay, if any benefit of doubt is there, better okay to leave it the valuation assignment. Even we have done in few there because the judges may be interpreted in few other ways.
yes.
So,
Sir, one more thing, just to kind of elucidate on this, because the clause is very cryptic. It says that during 3 years prior to his appointment, so we can have historical perspective, or 3 years after the valuation of asset was conducted by him. How can I prevent anyone from getting interest in that asset who is related to me, or let's say direct or indirect, correct? And restrict that person. Now,
Sir,
I'm
like I'll
unable
add
to
one
comprehend
point
this
here.
part of the second part of the clause, that as a valuer or 3 years after the valuation of the asset was conducted by him.
Correct. I'll add here. See, suppose say I have valued a company ABC Private Limited. They paid me say 1 lakh fee as my valuation fee. After that, they started giving me vetting agreements, doing secretarial services, maintaining books of accounts or something. Tomorrow, after 1-2 years, there is a question on this valuation report. Then anyone can prove that I was paid something
Correct.
indirectly to give that report. That's where we need to be very careful. Better to avoid this kind of conflict. See, as far as like no, we are like not getting into any legal issues. It is okay. If you are getting into legal issues and your valuation report has been taken to legal system to question it, then after that, if you have taken assignment with that company and they paid a good amount of that assignment fees, then it will be proved that without getting into this one, saying that we have some kind of arrangement with the promoters as company to give that reports. No
Correct.
one will get into your innocence or something later. So better to avoid these kind of conflicts to safeguard ourselves.
Absolutely, sir. I think that was a well
No,
said statement.
So that's where I said, if my income is say 10 lakhs per annum, and if I'm getting 1 lakh per my company, I remember that benchmark was some 10 like a 10% of my total income. So if it is exceeding that, then I should not. Otherwise, if I get a 5,000, 10,000 small income, then that shouldn't matter.
So I think well said, sir. I think these are guidance notes and people can interpret again. But nice inputs and good conversation on this aspect. We'll take up the next part of it now. This is again now to Mr. Subarayadu. Does valuation report is required for issue of redeemable preference shares by a company? Section 62 applies for issue of shares. Shares include both equity and preferences. It's a specific answer. Yes, sir, please.
Okay, I have limited experience in this area, so I'll just give a very short reply before I pass on to that. Redeemable preference shares, how is the redemption going on is the question here. It's not saying convertible, right?
It's not convertible. It's redeemable.
So
it's more like a debt.
Yeah. See, I have come across, okay, I've done valuations where people have asked for valuation reports in this case. In my opinion, yes, it is required. It is always better to take that valuation to redeemable preference shares, but I don't know.
I'll ask Mr. Ravi Devarkonda, sir.
Yeah.
Any
One second, sir. I just excuse me. I was doing something else. Can you, or you can ask somebody else?
Yeah, it's okay, sir. I'll ask Mr. Rajeshwara, please.
Sir, this one is, though it is an equity, it should be treated as a debt because we will be repaying after 2 years or 3 years. We can apply, suppose say dividend 8%, 10%, 12%, whatever we are agreeing upon. That generally I did it for non-convertible debentures in that way. What is the interest agreed? When is the repayment period?
Is it required, sir? The discussion is about whether
it is required. It is required. It is required, but like no, in few cases, practically what personally I have done is, instead of going for preferential issue, I have planned a rights issue, went for shareholders
Yeah.
approval, taken approval to issue RPS through rights basis, went to board meeting, planned a rights issue and closed it to avoid confusions. But if you go strict by law, it is required. And if you are doing, better to adopt that kind of valuation, this one, to arrive at that face value. Otherwise, RPS giving at a premium something difficult to justify.
Yeah.
This is my personal opinion.
So see, when it is clearly given, it's not an OCPS or a CCPS and a pure play debt instrument. Okay. Not sure whether it's required or not, but I think you're saying it's required. Mr. Subbaradu says it's required. Anyone else wants to give a perspective? Because it's a pure debt. See, even if there is some kind of optionality of conversion, I'm certain that it has to be done. If it's a pure play debt, Mr. Vikas, have you experienced this? Requirement of such kind of shares being valued?
No, Raman.
Okay.
I would like to add, so there are two things. So in terms of evaluation, I think it's a debt instrument and valued like a debt instrument. And when you look into preference shares, in a legal perspective, preference shares are also considered as a preference shares. There is so though they are debt, but these are part of the share capital. And considering the rules applies to the capital infusion and everything, so these has to be considered based on a legal form rather than a commercial form. So when you consider legal form, you need to get it well.
See, I have one more point to add here. Preference shares, whenever dividends are not paid, they partake care of equity, because the people get the right to vote, and the right to vote is very different from a debt, right? So in this situation, yes, it has got some value where it needs to be evaluated. So that should that eventuality happen. So that's another perspective one should think about. And
yeah, I think understood. Yeah, please, sir.
Sir, actually, by principally, I agree that it may not be required, but section 620 is very clear. Whenever a company issues shares on a preferential basis, valuation input is mandatory. Shares are equity and preferred. So according to me, as Rajesh sir said, since the law says shares preferential, redeemable preferred shares, that shares, it has to be valuation required. And again, principles, he said some other values or can be go as a rights issue. Other point you are saying is preference shares for India's purpose, they consider as a debt instruments. So considering all the things, though logically it may not be required, but section 622 is very clear. But actually I've seen many people in practice, they will follow, they don't get the valuation report. But by law, it is a requirement, sir.
Yeah, I think that sums up. So just adding a little bit of my perspective, whenever we are talking about a valuation report as a substance of law, we are essentially saying that there is no kind of irregularity happening in terms of any stakeholder getting impacted, so that the new investment comes at a fair value of the company. That's the perspective when you look at a valuation report, valuing the today, so the new investments comes at the correct value. If it's a pure play debt as a concept, which doesn't impact any of the existing stakeholders, it should not. So I leave it there. I was so tempted to give my perspective, but I think out of caution, people can take their decision making on the valuation report. Can I take the next one? Private limited company proposes to the business of proprietor by issuing shares for consideration other than cash. Proposes to the business of proprietor by issuing shares for consideration other than cash. That can be always set up, right? Mr. Devarkonda, I think you're there, you're not there.
Yes, I'm there.
This is allowed, right? You can always open up with other than cash also, right?
You can issue it other than cash. The requirement is that is a valuation report required.
Okay.
Okay. So because we are seeing in that section only, so I'm posting that 62(1)(c) section, which says that consideration other than cash, the valuation is required for both for the asset and also the share.
Perfect. So both are possible.
Both.
Okay.
Supposing you're allotting shares for consideration other than cash for a building. Suppose your company is acquiring building and giving shares. You have to value the building and also the share of the company, so that we know the value of the building is 1 crore. The value of the share is 100 rupees. So you need to issue so many shares.
Yes, sir.
Sir, this question number 10 and 11 together we have to read, sir. I think there is an, I think then that is the question. It is a income is a 10. 10 and
Okay,
11
I'm
together.
I'm reading out the 11th also then. Thank you, sir. The valuation of a company is done by registered. Is it mandatory business valuation preparation to be done by a registered valuer? Okay. Or can CA issue valuation report based on NAV method? See, now if you were to see what Mr. Ravi Devarakonda just said, I think he can only take this up, sir.
No, valuation of a company is done by the registered valuer. Is it mandatory that business valuation of proprietor to be done by? No, for proprietors, there is no registered valuer concept. No, because we are all mandated by Section 247 of the Companies Act.
Perfect.
If it's a partnership and individuals, then any CA can do it. Any CA.
So it's not only company, even LLPs are to be done by the registered valuers, right, sir?
LLP also should be registered.
value. So,
LLP should be registered valuer only. Right?
It's not
LLP is a
given,
part
right?
of Companies Act. LLP is also part of Companies Act. No?
Okay, so LLPs, so, but only so partnership firms and proprietors do not come under that.
Not
They
come
can be
under
outside.
That's
So that answer. So this was straight question. So we are moving to the next one.
But sir, in this is Sheetal here. But sir, Companies Act says that if issue of shares is happening for other than cash consideration, then other than cash should also be valued. So will it not be through IBBI registered valuer?
That's what I said, madam. When the company is issuing shares to a purchase of a building, so the building has both has to be done. I think has to be done by registered valuer first. The building has to be valued by for the company purpose by the building of the valuation of the building, valuation of the equity share. Both has
So
to be done.
the consideration as well as the value, as well as the shares. Yeah, both need
the
valuation. Correct.
Sheetal, the question has little clear. They use the word issuance of shares and they said proprietor. I think that's well. So the principle here is, as Mr. Devarakonda sir said, if it's a company, yeah, registered value comes in. If it is just a proprietorship, it doesn't require registered value. That's what he's trying to tell me.
Sir,
I think
to add to the question, most cases we convert the sole proprietorship into a company. In situations like that, individual assets also needs to be valued by a registered valuer.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. I think we all agree with that the valuation is required by registered valuer, especially if the proprietorship is getting converted to a company, because now it's coming under the Companies Act again. So the next interesting one, which is completely again from moving away from regulatory to a business question, whether projection should be obtained for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, or in a period. I would like Mr. Vikas to take this up. Take this question, please.
Sure. Thank you, Ramani. So this here, the projections, whether they are for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it's a question of the stage of business. If you are, because at the end of the projection period, you are giving a terminal value. All we need to ensure that terminal value is given at a mature situation or a stable situation of the cash flows. So at the end of 3 years, if you see that, you are achieving a stability and beyond that, it is only inflationary growth, you can stop with 3 years also. There is it's technically will give you a very similar answer. There may not be significant difference. However, as a practice, again, over a period of time, as a practice, we typically tend to take it for a period of 5 years.
Excellent. I think the point here which you have mentioned, Mr. Vikas sir, and for the benefit of everyone, is it's not about how many years you are giving projection. It's about whether it has reached a stable state beyond which the terminal value calculation can be applied. So once you look at the logic of a terminal value, which is actually using the perspective of a stable growth rate. So if the stable growth rate cannot be achieved in 10, 15 years, actually the projections have to be there for 10, 15 years. So one of the ways, therefore, I think because you cannot project or you do not have the anticipation to visualize for beyond 5 years, what one typically does, probably, and Mr. Subbaraju can confirm, is you go projections till 5 years, and then thereafter you start making a judgment of tapering down the projection growth rates to a stable state growth rate for typically another 5, 10 years. It's more like a H model in a valuation. And then after that tapering down, coming to a stable state, then you calculate the terminal value. I think Mr. Subbaraju, would you like to throw further on this?
Yeah, I think so. As you said, when do the operations reach a steady state is the moot question here, right? If they reach a steady state in 5 years, so be it. If they reach a steady state in 4 years, so be it. But from practical point of view, also, as Mr. Vikas Suresh has said, it could be, the higher of both. If the steady state is being reached in 3 years, you might still, from a safety point of view, look at 2 years more and ask for 5 years. But yes, in case even after 5 years, steady state is not reached, then you can definitely extend it.
Excellent, sir. I
Sir,
think that sums up.
I'll add one point here.
Yes, please.
So, having said that, we should be careful with bold projects, build, operate, lease, transfer. There, this doesn't work. There may be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or 30 years. Otherwise, this kind of power purchase agreements, there will be specific periods that we need to go for till last year. This is my another input.
Yeah. So what you're saying is there are specific contracts which are limited to a 10-year, 12-year period. You are trying to say that you are trying to say that you have to do till that point of time all the way till the contract exists. So the only challenge is, sir, one can do that. The point here is whenever you are evaluating a company, one is a traditional method. You have like a real estate business model. 7-year project, you calculate for 7 years, bring in a value, determine. There's no question of concept of terminal value. But when there's a projections which are where it's a going concern, then we are saying that the company grows for years and years. So even if a particular contract is getting closed, the assumption, in principle, assumption is there's a renewal of the contract that comes up in those projections if one is to be treated as a going concern. I think that's something, so each case will be different, and the person, that's the way the valuer's role comes in, not looking purely from an Excel perspective, but looking at the company itself and trying to look at what does the company do and how it emanates from the concept of a going concern.
Yeah, actually, one more thing. Supposing you are doing for a toll road. Toll road has a specific period of say 15 years or 20 years.
Correct.
Then again, you can't do a terminal value and all that, because that terminal value implies that you're doing for indefinite period.
Correct.
So if it's a toll road where you know it's a specific period, better to do the full 15 years or so, 15 years or 20 years also. That otherwise it gives wrong.
Correct.
Remani, I would just like to step in here for one point, because the very important perspective has come in. May I?
Yes, sir. Please, sir. Please, Mr. Vikas.
See, I think very rightly brought in here, the point of number of years of projections is the second question in any of our projections. Always, if it is a finite life asset, then there is no discussion around how many years. You have to do it for the remaining finite life. Uncompleted question of finite life. So this whole question of 3 years, 5 years, 7 years is applicable only when the business is an indefinite life. Even if in a power project where it has a life of 25 years, we have projected it for the full 25 years. You don't have a choice there because it's a finite life asset. So only in case of infinite life assets, we are talking about this 3, 4, 5, 7 years or terminal value. So otherwise, this question doesn't arise for finite.
Perfect, sir. I think that's somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Next, so can we move to the next question? How can the risk faced by the valuers be mitigated in case of any statutory like NCLT, ROC raises any questions or issue questioning against startup valuation? What are the risks involved in IBC valuation? So part I think it has already been answered that enough amount of due diligence done by the RV while submitting a report, and secondly, the MRLs will help in partly. However, in the case of IBC valuation, there is no question of MRLs or such things. I would again take it to Mr. Ravi Devarakonda, if you can throw some perspective on this part of it.
Sir, basically, in case of an IBC valuation, the appointment is by RP or a liquidator, and it's not by the management. So there is no management representation letter because the RP himself doesn't know many details about the company. First thing. Second thing is that in many of the IBC valuation cases, there will not be balance sheet, there will be no fixed asset register, there will be no project, there will be no past history also, because for the past 2-3 years, balance sheet will not be there. So with great difficulty, the registered professional will somehow hook up one balance sheet and give us. Literally, that is actually what is happening, because what he does is that he has a 2019 or 20 balance sheet. Based on that, he makes some see what is the bank balance as of today, what are the other assets, and then brings up without calculating depreciation also, without making provisions, use a balance sheet to us. Okay, taking that, we are supposed to give him a valuation. Now we need to sit in a judgment seat of how a valuer, how a purchaser, if there is an applicant, how will he do it, or if it is a liquidation buyer, how will he do it. So that's what we need to sit in a judgment seat and then do it. In fact, plant and machinery and land and building is easy because the current situation of the plant and machinery, current land building is there. Here circle rates or here the invoice rates are for the same model. If you are talking of this laptop, what is the current market rate? What is the cost? All these things are available. Whereas for most of the other issues like receivables, stock in trade, or investments and all that, no, you may not get much information.
Yeah.
So at the same time, we can't postpone, we can't keep on asking the same information to the RP because he doesn't have it. And the entire thing is a time-bound process. In a normal situation, at the end of this, at the end of the assignment, you can say that I'll not issue a report to go. Whereas here in IBC, since you are appointed by the court-appointed officer, you can't even say that I'll not give you, because if he takes you to NCLT, halfway through he deserted me, it becomes another problem. So based on the, is most like a best judgment assessment kind of a thing, based on the given information, with as many riders and as many qualifications as possible, you take report. But ultimately it is risky because what happens is that what I assume, the second liquidator may not, second valuer may not assume. Definitely is a risky proposition.
So here, with the permission of the panelists here, I just want to give a practical a case or event that has happened. I was part of a hearing and the opponent lawyer had taken up the valuation report, and line item by line item, he presented to the judge and thrashed the valuer's report, saying that valuer did not do anything. And all the standard clauses that we actually write, he actually even read some of those clauses. He said the valuer did not do anything. They are actually trying to escape with the standard clauses. He has not applied mind at all. So IBC valuations are very risky. Sorry, I'm stating this, and therefore, if one is doing it, there has to be extreme amount of caution and detailing. The reason I had to share this is because tendency is to quote very low on IBC valuations. Bankers prefer very low quotations on valuations, therefore, because everything is dead here. And lot of, I've been on RP and I have appointed valuers. They tend to just do a lot of, pardon my language, copy paste or standard zero valuations for SFA. The challenge is when, because in IBC, there are opponents, there's a resolution applicant, there are other resolution applicants, there are promoters, everyone is fighting. And the lawyer is smart enough, he's going to use all this and against the valuers, because valuation report is the foundation for starting up any pricing in the resolution. So it's a caution to all the valuers sitting here. And I personally, I do very limited IBC valuation, but when I do, while the fees is less, I actually do a very detailed, even if it's SF valuation, I go, if it's a proprietor, I try to reach out to call those proprietors, documents, lot of write-up I do for IBC valuations. It's just a perspective I'm sharing. And Mr. Devarkonda said that it has to be done in extreme detailing, and it's much appreciated. And I have personally seen this in the court, so I thought I'll share that information to you.
Sir, is there any insurance coverage you help us?
No. See, please understand.
Not for IBC, general valuation, professional indemnity.
See, there are professional. See, please understand, insurance contracts, if you were to read, and others can also bring in, they are very clear. Insurance contracts, when you do out of negligence, it is not covered. So a simple Cyrus Mystery road crash, now they are trying to see whether backseat belt is required and if the insurance need not be paid. So negligence, there's no insurance for that. If it has happened despite a lot of effort and no negligence, then only insurance is covered. So your work has to show.
In such a case, there is no penalty.
So
if you have done everything perfect, then somehow the court case itself you can.
Therefore, you don't do it. So no, the only reason you do it, only reason you take insurance if at all is not for actually the negligence part. It is the harassment part. So you have done all the part rightly so, but despite that, someone can harass you for some time, and there's a cost that you incur on the legal and other part of it. To save that, you take insurance. That is the reason why you actually take insurance. Yes, sir. So I hope that helps in answering the question number 13, and I'm running late, but I'll try my best again. Which websites can be used for arriving beta size premium for private companies? So I would just ask this question one, either to Mr. Subbaraidu or to Vikas, if they have experience straight on for any databases, they can state that.
See, data, either Ashwat Damodaran site or Bloomberg, Reuters, even moneycontrol.com I've used to do this size premium. I've not. Maybe we can ask Mr. Vikas Suresh.
Vikas Suresh, have you used any size premium question? This thing?
See, in India, there is no not too much of published data around size premium because market itself has not been so matured over the years that there is clear distinction between large cap and mid cap. So that's the reason why most of us follow the US size premium study. There is a size premium study done by Iverson Morningstar in the US. So where they say that, the difference between large cap, mid cap, and for various classes of sizes, what is the additional premium you take? So mostly that is what people have been using. Morningstar report for size premium, you can check for that.
Okay.
It's a paid report actually.
Okay. I think Mr. Rajeshwar also sent. So, Mr. Rajeshwar, would you like to throw some light, sir, since you have sent some case study?
See, I just want to add over for beta. See, I probably would like to, add that you can't take, you have to compute beta from your own working and computation. You can't take any website because you are not known whether they are taking 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, 5 years, and there has to be standard in that. And then whether it's a raw beta, levered beta, unlevered beta, adjusted beta, you don't know that. And then Ashwath Damodaran is a grossly wrong one to consider. Reason is simple. He takes average of 120 companies, and probably out of that 120 companies, might be 115 are not comparable at all, due to size, due to profitability, due to margin. So it will be difficult to defend that part. And computation is beta is pretty. I understand that it takes time, but it is not so complex. So that's the thought process. Because anything would you like to add on it?
See, normally beta we also compute. Now that part we are aligned, but not. I would not want to comment on the other sources because other sources have disclosed what is the approach they have followed. So everybody for the different purposes we tend to use those sources for corroboration. For example, Yahoo Finance gives you a beta of 5 years. So we know clearly that Yahoo Finance beta of 5 years is based on a daily stock price indices, return on indices. So what we do is we compute it and then we use some of these databases more as a corroboration so that sometimes if we are going wrong somewhere, some errors come in there. So you can catch those errors. You can't be very different from what these sources are also giving.
Absolutely bingo. I think I agree. And probably, probably the 5-year daily is something, it is making too much of noise. There is too much of data, too much of variations. And then probably it is more preferable to take 5-year weekly. For example, I take 5-year weekly. Right. So
I mean, sum and substance is nobody's propagating that you go to a website, pick what is there and don't adjust it. I think no one is suggesting that. We are all experienced enough for that. But what we're doing is where the beginning data where you pick it up from and the assumptions around it, where can you get it? So the multiple sources that you can use, but yes, you have to be aware of the limitations, the methodologies that each source might be using that, and you have to do adjusting calculations. I mean, the adjustments are not very complex calculations; they're fairly reasonably simple calculations. It can be done.
Yeah. I think that's well taken and well said. Only one element which I want to add it is I also personally feel and that essence is not on the denominator side or the numerator side. So because denominator side, one can actually play around, there could be challenges. The business, the generation of business. Once it has a certainty of the business, the risk is lower. Just because the comparables are literally giving a different beta, but if there's certainty in the numerator projection with reasonable amount of caution, beta can be easily taken because the expectations come down because of the stability in projections. So yes and no. When I do personally also, I actually not really worry about betas more. I worry more about the core numerator side. That's what I try to do. And then, of course, other things add up. The size premium studies have been stated by Mr. Vikas of the Morningstar.
Yeah, but whatever you do, please don't assume beta is equal to 1. I'm shocked. I'm shocked at the number of valuation reports where I see where beta has been assumed to be 1.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So any specific input on size premium in your this thing? This is more like a build-up risk method. Is that what? Because in a CAPM, we don't do a size premium, right? Or you do a modified CAPM? How do we do about it? Mr. Subaraju, you have done that size premium?
Honestly, I've never handled size premium case.
Anyone, Mr. Vikas or Mr. Davarpan, anyone who had done size premium?
I think he mentioned Morningstar.com.
Not the database, not the database. I'm saying that do you just add up using the build-up risk method? You just say this is the rise premium and just add up to the expected return using CFM. You just add up this value in an arithmetic basis, or you do something else?
It is in addition to your market return, like how you said, risk-free rate of return plus beta into risk premium, which is what you do. Like how you add other factors of company-specific premium. This is one of the factors which get added.
You just add up arithmetic.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Okay.
So,
Understood.
for example, if it is say, for example, if it is 3.21%, as a study for March 21, that 2021 study says 3.21 is the size premium. So over and above your market return, after you adjust your beta, you just add 3.21 to the discount rate.
See, my only challenge here is as follows. Because this is a very interesting question, I don't want to run around, pardon me, Mr. Subbarao. Whenever you say market premium, market actually captures all kinds of companies already. If market captures already all kinds of companies, where is the question of adding again a company risk premium?
Okay, good question here. I can take this, Ramani, because maybe we try to do the size premium ourselves.
Yes, sir.
We are attempting at that. See, the way the size premium computes, you have to step back and see that market return is done for the market as a whole.
Correct.
So it has smaller companies, larger companies. It is a basket of companies.
Correct.
The whole approach to computing size premium itself is to say, as compared to the market, if my size is smaller, what is the extra return I should give? So the point is that since you have started with the market, just for the sake of discussion, I'm putting it. Suppose market return is representative of median of the market. So then size premium is to say, compared to the median of the market, how are small caps doing, how are mid cap doing, how are large cap doing. Hence, you have to add because you have taken only the market return from the median. So you are adding others to the market return median to say that, okay, smaller caps are 3% more return compared to the market median. That's the reason why we keep adding it.
But that has been taken in the beta, because if you look at the CFM model, it was never there originally, this risk premium. The beta that you are talking about invariably captures that risk. So what you're saying is, if I have a diverse market portfolio, I have a smaller companies have a higher risk, larger companies have a lower risk, assuming that that's how it is. And therefore, invariably the beta that you're trying to use it is actually the derived output of all the risk put together.
Understood.
So adding again after that's why I asked this question. If you're using a build-up risk method, adding a company risk premium might be comfortable. But if you're using a CAPM and then adding a company risk premium, size premium, I'm not certain about it. Please, your thoughts.
Sorry, here I would just interject and answer that point. Beta does not give you what is the delta. Beta only gives you a direction of movement. If the market has moved in this particular direction, what are respective stocks moving? It doesn't tell you that over and above market return, what is the delta? So
right. Agree.
Carving out one portion from the market return. So which itself the starting point is the median. I don't know if I'm articulating that point rightly here or fully here.
Yeah, I agree. I think because sir, you're right. Ramani sir,
yes,
this is to maybe slightly put it in a different way. See, the market return is a median. Okay, so when you're calculating the median, you're also going by a measure of central tendency for the market itself, right? The median size, which includes large, medium, and small. Right. So if the target company that you're valuing happens to be a small company, okay, and if you're going by the market beta of the market portfolio, that would not be correct. You need
so beta
to
is of the company, sir. Beta is not the market. Okay, say I am not supposed to be, so I will pack it. It's as is in some questions we had a slight difference of opinion. So I would go with the experts.
I would like to just add, Mr. Ramani. Actually, the beta only captures the systematic risk, and whenever we are talking about size premium or company specific premium, we are talking about the unsystematic risk, which is specific to the company. So beta only capture the systematic risk part.
Well put. That's
Well put.
a good
Yeah.
answer actually.
Absolutely, sir. Only so we can move. The only part is that if you are using a CFA model, whether you add up. That's the question we had it. But I think experts guided us. I think we'll go with that. We should be able to use that.
No, sorry, just 1 minute only. I want to extend this. I have a different question. When we say size premium, we are talking about size premium. In case if we add size premium, does that mean we should not consider illiquidity discount? Because that is also related to the size, illiquidity. Somewhere it is related to
No. Illiquidity and size are different, sir. In my understanding, I'll take the next question.
Okay.
And here it talks about that. Size is between two listed, both are liquid, but the company sizes are different. Therefore, the riskiness of the companies are different. Illiquidity it is not marketable in nature. There's no liquidity. Am I right, sir? I think the panelist, anyone would like to take? Mr. Rajesh, anyone who want to take this? Second question actually takes further. How to arrive DLOM for private companies, whether you add company risk premium. The question is there. Who would like to take it up? Mr. Rajesh Rao, would you like to consider this question?
Okay, regarding company specific risk premium, DLOM, DLOG, as per CCI guidelines, it is like minimum 15% it is specified for lack of marketability. Generally, private companies, when we are valuing, if someone is investing, if they want to exit, it is not so easy to exit like traded securities. So we will provide for this. Generally, 15 to 30% will be considered. DLOC also, lack of control, like when minority shareholders are selling their shares. Someone who is holding below 25%, when they're selling the shares, they will not have any control on the company. So we'll provide for, again, a lack of control. That also, it will be in between 15 to 30%. Company specific premium, I don't have proper experience on that. Someone else can take up on that.
Yes, please. Mr. Devakonda, would you like to take this?
And I think what they have said is perfect.
Again, on the DLOC part of it, Mr. Subbaradu, would you like to say something on that?
Yeah, in fact, there are some data points as far as DLOC is concerned for the Indian market also. DLOM, I think, has been more tougher. At least I have not seen DLOM working specific to India, because Suresh can add on to that. DLOM definitely, I saw some research reports where over a period of 20-25 years, industry-wise, using M&A data. So wherever companies have acquired controlling stake in the stock market, okay, using those data points, the control premium average for different industries had been worked out. I saw a research report by some of the investment banking organizations specific to the Indian market, right? So one can use that definitely. Between 15 and 30% is a standard norm, but this data is available. DLOM, I have also used some AICP publications about DLOM trends that have been either used by the IRS in the US case, and one can maybe in the valuation report one can say that because of the absence of data we've used this US data, and ignoring DLOM is a bigger sin than not trying to estimate DLOM and using it. Because Suresh sir, you'd like to add something on DLOM and DLOM on this?
Sure, Subha, thank you so much. See, in my understanding, if the illiquidity, I'll just take it from the last point which we left and then take it from here. If the illiquidity is restricted to the nature of the size, then I think size premium captures it. But there are illiquidities coming in because of certain contractual requirements and certain other nuances. And those things is where we are putting the DLOM for, over and above the size premium. And like how everybody is saying, there is no studies for size for DLOM. But what happens is that what you're saying is this is the discount for lack of marketability. So which means that because you have an asset which have a restriction, say for example, ESOP, if you have a 2-year lock-in period in ESOP, which means I will go with an understanding that is, again, there is no publication for this. This is going more by our practice, that if the lock-in is for 2 years, which means the investor has a restricted right on the returns for 2 years. So I will take, if your discount rate is 15%, And then you're talking about 2 years of lock-in. So which means 30%. Now in that 30% is the maximum threshold you're talking of. Because 2 years I have locked in, I can't liquidate my investments, right? I am locked in with that liquidity for me. So I take that as a benchmark and take a percentage from that to say this is a discount for lack of marketability. Lack of control can still have a study, because we have been seeing that if there is a control transaction in listed entities, if you look at, for example, if there are listed entities where controls are transferred, you see the transaction announcement date plus 1 day, 7 day, 10 day, 15 day, 1 month. You will see the stock price movement. That will tell you what is the kind of implicit premium which was factored into it when there is a change of control. So there, in case of for lack of control, there are a couple of studies, and like how Subha said, it can range from 15, 20, 30%. We have seen that where there are extreme situations, even 50% could be a control premium which one has paid. But you can assess that for listed entities basis the stock price movement closer to the date of announcements.
Right. Okay. So for private companies, it's a challenge.
Private companies is the challenge. Private companies, because you do not have the base value, you do not know what is the premium paid over and above the base value.
Correct. So essentially, just to take this, close this issue on DeLorme part of it, the principle is that if my monies are stuck, I have an opportunity cost, because when you value a company, the valuation of the company is like a going concern. So inherently, the presumption is the value will increase at the cost of capital year on year. But the cost of capital that is going to increase year on year, vis-a-vis my opportunity cost, if I were to get the money out and use it at somewhere else, the difference is actually the loss that I have because I don't have the liquidity. And that is essentially we are trying to do the liquidity discount. And I think, which is what I think Mr. Vikas also is stating that 2 years, if I'm stuck, my monies are stuck and I have to use a discount.
Sir, regarding second question, when to apply this DLOC or DLOM, this is after arriving at the enterprise value only, this DLOC or DLOM will be applied, not before.
Okay, so you're saying after arriving at the enterprise value, you apply the DLOM or the DLOC.
Yeah, a good point actually. A good point actually. That's not important to say that. We can't adjust it through beta or cost of capital or whatever. After you arrived at the values, you apply this discount at the last stage. Correct.
And Ramani, just to add, because you raised this question for private companies, there is one corroborative support you can take.
Okay.
In the same year, take a time period and see what is the kind of market comparable companies multiple in terms of revenue multiple and profit multiple. In the same period, try to see what are other transactions in the private space which have happened. Private space buy and sell transactions where control transfer has happened. So
okay.
The market is giving, for example, automotive sector, if the market is giving a 7 times or 8 times multiple. And in the same period, if I look at the transactions which have happened 8 or 9 times, 20% premium being factored for control. Okay. On a same time period, what is the stock market giving? Because stock market has no control, right? Stock market is a without control multiple.
Complete.
And in the same period, try to take what are the other transactions which have happened. What is the delta you are able to see? That could be a corroborative support. It could just be a support information to say for private companies, this is the kind of control premium people are giving.
Okay. So here, since we are talking about cost of loss, capital, opportunity cost, comparable multiples, I'll just introduce a new question here. Negative net worth companies. The projections are very much there, but today I have a negative net worth. How would we calculate cost of capital? What will be the D by E? How do we go about it? Any thoughts on that? Mr. Subbaraidu?
Negative net worth, cost of capital. So by implicit assumption, you're saying you're trying to use the income approach, correct?
Yeah, income approach.
Because only when you use the income approach, the cost of capital comes up.
Correct.
I've never encountered a situation like this one.
Okay.
So if anybody else has dealt with it, I would
Mr. Devarkonda?
pass the question on to
Mr. Ravi Devarkonda, have you encountered?
No, I think Mr. Vikas is the correct person.
Mr. Vikas, would you help? Negative net. I have a negative net worth today.
Yes.
I have projected where I'm going to make money. Okay, I have based on negative net worth, I have some kind of a D by E, but negative. I'm trying to calculate the enterprise value. As in a private company, this is very much possible. I am a loss making, but I have some intangible asset which is not recorded, but some investor is ready to put in money, and therefore going forward, I might have a value creation. How do we calculate WACC then?
In fact, another issue I wanted to ask is that is a negative net worth company worse off than a startup company?
Yeah, so I'll ask this question again to Mr. Vikas. Yes, please.
If both the questions answer is no challenge, because when we are taking cost of capital, when we are doing this debt by equity, you are taking not specific to the company, but a market participant debt equity, which means you are taking the debt equity of the comparable companies to say that if what is the debt equity applicable to the industry is what you're applying me. I might have done a different capital structure of taking higher debt or higher equity, and then, because of which I've messed it up, and then I'm getting a particular negative net worth. But if you look at it for a business on a standalone basis, the market participant will pay you what debt equity is applicable in that sector. So in a automotive sector, if it is 0.5:1 is the debt equity, the valuation should be based on 0.5:1. So you take the debt equity of the comparable companies of the sector. Clear. So I think that from a debt equity, what we take. Now, whether it is good off or bad off, negative net worth does not indicate anything to me whether it's a good or a bad company, because early stage, depending on the stage of the business, also there all the businesses go through an investment phase and then come back to a positive stage. So if the negative net worth is mainly on account of the stage of business, then I have no problem. But if the negative net worth is mainly on account of some kind of financial indiscipline or on account of some misappropriation, then obvious answer is no, that is not a right company.
Mr. Vikas, here, again, interesting thought that you have said about the market participant.
Sure.
I'm just trying to bring in practice because Mr. Devarakonda had seen in the industry for years. Suppose if I have a negative net worth in the company, I actually don't get in the debt in the market until I stable myself out in the next 1-2 years. In reality, you don't get debt in the market. So it's an ideal case because when we are doing a WACC over a period of time, unless we do year-on-year WACC, wherein we say that first year, second year, you don't get any equity debt at all, and third year, you get a debt some portion, and therefore gradually reach out to the market participant's debt ratio, you actually don't get that. So is it right to use a market participant D by E in back for all the projected years, or we have to do, how do you go about it?
So, see, when it comes to a business, we are doing a fair valuation of a business, saying that if somebody else who has a different balance sheet is taking it over, he will be able to borrow, which means your projections on a standalone basis have to be EBITDA positive and cash positive there. So if what you're saying is that negative net worth companies mainly because of some either from financial structure point of view, or fact is that next to 1-2 years you are still going to have negative cash flows on a standalone basis, then you obviously on a banker's point of view you have a challenge. But from a market participant point of view, if the same startup company is being taken over by Wipro or by Infosys, they can still borrow because EBITDA is going to be positive going forward. So that is what a market participant will have to be saying, that the market participant balance sheet is fine. Whatever your capital structure, you remove that color of your capital structure from it. And after that also, if you believe that it is going to be negative for next to 5 years, then my understanding is that even for a comparable companies, even for a market participant, there will be no debt equity. As an example, just to give you a practical example, when we are doing for edutech companies, edtech companies, it is not that they are by default having even the comparable companies are having a zero debt equity. It is not necessary that the market participant always has a positive debt equity. The market participant, because of the nature of industry, rightly said that next 3, 4, 5 years, the industry itself will have a negative debt equity, and it's not a lucrative sector for banking. So then even market participant will be zero debt equity only, then you have to take full equity there.
Okay. So that will be cost effective.
E-commerce as a sector, edutech as a sector, you see that whether you do your company or you do market participant, you will get 100% equity structuring only.
Okay, understood. Fantastic. I think so. At the end of the day, if there's a huge negative net worth, if the market participant also is negative net worth, the cost of equity will be your cost of capital.
Absolutely.
Okay. So next question is again technical one, and IBC valuations you have done. So since Mr. Ravi Devarakonda is also an IP, I think I'll ask him. In the case of IBC valuation, if the difference in the two valuation reports is more than 20%, can the valuer reconsider his report? Valuer reconsider his report in case only draft is submitted and final report not yet signed, or the IP should go for a third valuer. Sir, please.
So the IBC, the law requires that we should appoint two valuers. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that they will get a decent valuation. Now, when we appoint two valuers, we'll give the same set of information to both the valuers. And okay, especially as with the SFA, what happens is that we'll give them the same set of debtors, creditors, investment, and aging of all these debtors, all the bank balance, everything we'll give them. Now, each person is, for that matter, the land and building and plant and machinery also will give them the same data set of information. What the logic behind the whole system is that the values are not supposed to discuss among themselves and come to a settlement. That's the whole logic. So keeping that in view, the act has been prescribed that the code prescribes that 20%, if it is more than that, they should appoint a third valuer. And if that value is also significantly different, the closest to average should be taken as a value. That's what the rule says. Now, if the value is significantly different, then the RP, because the draft report will be given to the RP first. The RP should ensure that whether he has considered all the assets or not. If he has considered all the assets, assumptions are the valuer's choice. You can't tell him that you take 10% of the receivables as a fair value, 20% as fair value. All that we can't prescribe him. But normally, as a RP, what we do most of the times is that when we get both the reports, we'll see that whether everything is taken into consideration or not, first thing. And if the value is significantly different, we'll immediately request one of them to help us in arriving it. Because what happens is if I appoint a third valuer, then I have a limited time of 180 days. So first valuer itself will take, I'll appoint him after 60, 70 days. Then by the time he gives the report will be at least another 100 days. Then by the time we get the plans and the date of plan receipt, we should have the plan report ready with us. So appointing a third valuer is a nightmare for any RP. So normally we try to avoid, and the valuers also try to accommodate to the situation where. So practical this one is that he should negotiate with the valuers and then settle it. If nothing is happening, if the valuers are so adamant, then he has to go for third valuer. But if you go to third valuer, hold the timeline of IBC, we go.
Yeah, only thing is this, there are some disciplinary actions. If you have submitted a draft, you have a right to change it. Right. But the change is purely because if you are changing assumptions on your own and not influenced by any other stakeholder. That should be the messaging part.
That's right.
Yes, sir. So I will go with the next one. Again, what are the new valuation techniques can be used to value other than DCF in startup valuation? Whether these methods are acceptable to ROC, RBI, MCA, NCLT. Sir, Mr. Rajesh Rao, sir, would you like to talk about this, sir? I think it's more compliance again, whether these regulatory authorities accept or not.
Add income tax also. Income tax.
Income tax.
That they missed out.
Yes, Mr. Rajesh Rao, you would like to say something?
Okay, sir. Like if you go by other than Income Tax Act, ROC, RBI, MCR, NCLT, unless there is a dispute, they cannot take up your valuation report and question saying that how did you use this valuation and how did you arrive at, unless there is a dispute. But having said that, in one of the ROCs, ROC has questioned a report given by DCF method saying that it cannot be like this. I don't want to approve your MGT 14, you get one more report. Okay. And regarding Income Tax Act, it is very clear under DCF method, RV or chartered accountant or cost accountant cannot give, only merchant banker, category 1 merchant banker can give. Even NAV method, 11UA NAV method, RV cannot give, only chartered accountant or cost accountant can give. So whatever method we are using, either DCF or whatever startup valuation methods we are using, we should be able to give proper justification why we are using that method. Then in case any dispute, we will be able to justify ourselves. Otherwise, ROC, RBI, MCA, in case like no, I'll give a proper example regarding RBI here. What happened? We wanted to float a wholly owned subsidiary in India. Given the MCA working system, we were a little bit constrained. We floated a company with only 20 rupees share capital. Then later money has been brought in by the foreign company to make it is wholly owned subsidiary. One of the chartered accountant given a certificate saying that since it is a like early stage of even 1 month is not completed, So there is no method to value. We are giving on base the face value, book value, and value is rupees 10 rupees. RBI has accepted that. They have not questioned that report. So it is based on the values justification they'll agree upon. Unless there is a dispute, they'll not take up for scrutiny or questioning it.
Excellent, sir. So
Sir, 1
since-
minute. I think Rajeshwar, that is a correct question. In the my previous question, May incorporated, August, no. That's what I said. When a company just incorporated less than 6 months old, I think NAV method can be used. That's what my intention. When company just started, DCF, this is only paper calculations. So I think that in this context only I given. Then if RBI accepted, then NAV method for a company which is less than 6 months old can be considered. Yes, sir.
Okay, so now, so, I think we have 9:15. We'll take one more question, but here the quick one since you said income tax, merchant bankers are given the right to do under 11UA 1C, but I think 1CC or 11UA 2, I don't remember. The other one where they have defined NAV method, where child accountant, cost accountant can do. You said registered value cannot do. Is it registered value cannot do, sir? Because we are all registered. Where is it written, sir? It's not there, sir. Is anyone written?
See, it is not exclusion. It is specifically mentioned that DCF method only category 1 merchant banker can give.
Correct.
And that 11UA, that asset method, only chartered accountant they defined. Accountant again somewhere else they defined as cost accountant or chartered accountant. In that they have not included RV.
Because I know many people are doing also 1CB method, RVs are doing. So that's why I was asking whether it can be done or not done.
If RV is also chartered accountant, okay, you are safe side. If RV is a company secretary, it is a little bit risky.
I think that's a company's prerogative. Now the last question, I think it's 9:15. We'll wrap up with this question. Whether balance sheet, P&L, cash flow statement for projected years should
Sir,
be...
I just interrupt a bit.
Please.
The fact of the matter is, in case it is actually issued by a company secretary, 11UA 1CB certificate, if it is issued by a company secretary, then it will be invalid certificate. So companies will have to exercise caution in case they are trying to obtain a certificate from a company secretary who is also a registered valuer or anybody other than a chartered accountant, so to say.
Okay. So certificate is invalid. Okay.
Respectfully, sir, what happens is in case CS is issuing that certificate, that RV certificate also should be invalid for one simple reason, because he is specifying the purpose for which the certificate is going to be used. And in case that act itself is not permitting usage of that certificate for that particular purpose, then how this RVCS can also issue this certificate.
I think that's why I said if Mr. Here the people in the panel here and the audience have stated that it is invalid. I'm not sure because I know the industry many are doing it, and since the accountant word is there, RBI has disclosed that he is a registered valuer. Someone has given a purpose. He is giving a report, and since he's given a report based on that, whether he can be pulled up or not, I'm not certain about it. Because
actually, sir, the person appointing may not be knowing it, but the person appointee, that means the company secretary who is taking such appointment, he should say that
he's not eligible.
I'm not eligible, so don't ask me that. Because it's not that you're asking me, is up to you. That's not correct.
The only challenge is that ignorance of law is not bliss.
No,
so,
ignorance of law. See, the other person, the person appointing can have an ignorance of law.
Yeah.
But if I know that as a valuer, I should know that I should not be able to, I'm not eligible to issue this certificate. Suppose I am the person. I'll give you another example. Suppose somebody asked me for a land and building valuation. I can't simply do it because he asked me, no?
No, agreed, sir. What happens is, sir, if the purpose, if you have stated I am SFA valuer, I am giving it, you are going to ask for a report, whether he uses this or whether he also uses other CS, but as far as when I am stating a CS report, I cannot be pulled up just because I have given a report, is my interpretation of law. Having said that, I think I'll take your view. People should be on cautious side, not to do things which is not applicable for them. I agree to that.
But I think this question is about what are the new valuation techniques that can be used by valuers other than DCF. So I think maybe one of the
that part of
answer
it.
for that could be a build-up method, whether that is an acceptable method or whether that will be questioned. I think that should also be deliberated.
See, any method given in
See,
the
I think that question we have not.
I would like to
any method given in the international like
methods,
valuation standards and all that should be good.
Sorry, sir. The other methods, when we talk about startup valuations, apart from DCF, are Burkus method and first Chicago method and other scorecard method. So probably whenever we are talking about startup valuation, apart from DCF, these methods are being applied very rarely, and very few people are applying, and it is very difficult to apply because of the all qualitative parameters, and we have to do market corroboration. So that is the question is all about, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And definitely the method that you mentioned, Nataraja sir, the scorecard method, Burkus method, they are well known in the US for valuing pre-revenue startups. Okay, so although the question is about startup, it does not mention whether it is a pre-revenue startup or a post-revenue startup. Even if it is a post-revenue startup, definitely market methods can be used. This is my, and you're right. I've rarely seen any valuation report in India which use either the Burkus method or the scorecard method. I've rarely seen anyone.
Is build-up method also an acceptable method?
Acceptable by whom is the question?
Valuation.
Acceptable by whom is the question? ROC, RBI, MCA, NCLT, income tax. I would not expect them to.
We know that income tax is definitely a no-no, but whether it is ROC, RBI.
I've not come across any cases. If anybody has come across, maybe people can.
No, but sir, I think wherever the reference is to the valuation should be as per the international accounting standards, valuation standards, then it should suffice. No? Then all these methods should be okay. Or unless FEMA says specifically DCF method, something it says, then DCF only, you can't help it. But if the reference is to under any international valuation standard, then all these methods should be okay.
Only challenge is, sir, in the international valuation standard, you don't have something called a scorecard method. At least not to my knowledge. Is there a method? So wherein some of these methods, which I think startups which are used, where 70% they use a scorecard, give a metrics, start with a valuation and give a perspective. So from a regulatory perspective, whether they can be used, not certain. From an investment perspective, probably yes. Any investor wants to use that method. Anyone wants to throw or who has an experience of that from a regulatory perspective, whether it is accepted or not, a scorecard method?
Regulatory, no clue.
Regulatory is a challenge. So Kusum, to answer that question, try this out, and the regulatory questions, try for justification. But it is difficult. Using a scorecard method and convincing regulator will be a challenge unless you have some kind of a comparables there.
So, sir, I think we should all try this out and then come back and discuss, maybe 6 months, 1 year down the line.
Exactly.
And
some experience, someone would be pulled up and that experience can be shared here. So I think that's the way to summarize that. I would pick up this last question. We are already at 9:22. So I'll say if it is the last question, whether balance sheet, P&L, cash flow should be part of valuation report.
For projected years.
For projected years. Yeah, projected years.
Yeah.
Anyone, I would ask who is into compliances. Mr. Rajeshwara, would you like to take this up?
Sir, personally, I'm not giving. I'll give only finally the DCF, whatever we are working, that only I'll give as part of my report, not entire workings. Okay. One is it will be a confidential information also. If you are giving a balance sheet, P&L, everything, our report sometimes may get into public domain. So entire workings will be there. So personally, I feel we should not. It is someone was mentioning the Manthan saying that you speak to company secretariat, director saying that you give only executive summary and attach only executive summary to the MGT 14. In that case, it is okay. If you are not taking that kind of precautionary measures and just giving the report to them, whatever they want to do, then avoid caution and don't add all these three main financials to your report.
Mr. Devarkonda?
Right. This was discussed in the Manthan also, but of course, normally I'll give P&L, cash flow projections, and the discounted values. That's what I give. But what was discussed in the month end was that we'll make it two parts: executive summary without all these things, and a detailed report with all these things, so that executive summary can be only enclosed with a ROC format.
Mr. Subbarayadu?
Never come across this thought-provoking question. The confidentiality, basically the reason why this question is arising is from confidentiality angle, if I understand this correct.
The confidentiality, I don't agree to this because the report is only for a specific purpose to a specific user. So therefore, confidentiality, there's no reason.
From a transparency point of view, definitely it makes sense to include these, but there can be situations where if management is not comfortable in these numbers going out in the public domain by whatever means, then definitely we can.
Once you file with NDK 14, it is in public domain.
Yeah, correct. Right, that's all.
Okay.
Sir, Ramani sir, in my view, see, balance sheet and P&L account, we need not to put in the report, whereas we need to put the income projections and the cash flow projections and the discounting, what is the, how we have arrived, weighted average cost of capital, beta, then, okay, those things, okay, how we have taken cost of capital, those things we have to put it, okay, in even some few valuers reports, okay, only they will mention cash flow projections and they will put enterprise value. And you can't find out, okay, what is the beta they have used, what cost of capital, or what are the income projections they have used, nobody knows. But okay, instead of balance sheet and profit and loss account, at least we put income projections and how the formulas were arrived, like those, the beta and all, we can put it into the report.
I actually thought of that in my report. Normally, I keep everything. I don't actually not showing is not an acceptable thing, because the perspective is this is giving. I am giving it to the person. My duty is to give complete report to the as a valuer with all the details, and my audience is my client. And my client has a right to share this information to his audiences, which is authorities. And how he does is his choice. I would not cut down my detailing of annexures just because that's the way I do it. But I think the interesting part is someone said that there could be two parts. One is the executive summary kind, which summarizes, and then there could be detailed one. Together you give it to the client, and client can choose which part he wants to put it. I think that could help, as someone suggested, as two parts. I think we are at 9:30 right now. Nearly, we are almost done. 9:26. Should we conclude here, or you want to take one more question?
Balance 4 minutes for the conclusion part.
Okay. First of all, what I will do is a quick 30-second from each panelist, their experience on their valuation, if they can just show, because we'll start with Vikas. Generally, any interesting observation in your experience for 30 seconds?
Sure. Thank you, Manish. So, Casey, overall, what I'm seeing is that all the valuation, even as a regulatory side point of view, while I don't do much of regulatory stuff, initially when, a couple of years back, we started, the regulators did not have the understanding of the basics of valuation. Now, over a period of time, I see that they are also getting themselves adapted and educated on some of these points. So the more you refer to the standard stuff, the more you refer to some technicalities around it and present some sources. Now I'm seeing that it is more and more acceptable. So maybe wherever you are seeing the questions, I could also understand that there is Burkos method, scorecard method, different methods. What I have seen is that wherever there are challenges, you give DCF for one of the standard methods. Along with that, you give a second method. So then it gives them the comfort with DCF. They also are slowly getting used to and educated to the other methods. And then we are transitioning them to a newer methods also.
Fantastic. Educating the regulators. Thank you, sir. Mr. Subbarayadu, a quick one, 30 seconds.
No, I think I agree with whatever Mr. Vikas said. See, there are two bifurcations. There seems to be a set of professions who are primarily coming from a regulatory standpoint, and a lot of as either cost accountants or chartered accountants, some company secretaries, and we've been driven primarily by principles of conservatism. But definitely over the last 3 to 4 years, we have seen a more acceptability among regulatory authorities of the fact that, okay, if you're not making money, you can still be a unicorn. I think in the initial 3-4 years, there's a huge resistance that people used to automatically look at it with suspicion that there's some scam going on. right? But gradually we are seeing an opening up of thought, and perhaps at least a little more convergence of the regulatory versus the
Market
business standpoint of evaluations. Yeah.
Mr. Devarkonda?
Conservatism is always the best policy, because giving a high values and then getting stuck at later stage will be an issue, definitely, for everybody.
Okay.
So that's why. And then I'm always amazed with this subject. After going through 4 or 5 years of experience, also I'm still some basics, and we see so many questions unanswered.
So we are all learning, sir. I
And
think.
you see, after learning, you should come to a understanding. Now, here the problem is that after learning, we are again square one.
And Mr. Rajeshwara?
Subject here.
Sir, my only observation is, if someone is working with a skeleton staff or limited staff, try to avoid copy paste problems and get into problem. This is more people will be facing this problem. So be cautious before giving your draft or final report. Read once, twice, thrice, then give it.
And accordingly charge. Cost of time. Sorry, Mr. Vikas, you were saying something quickly.
No, I was just saying, I was just adding to what Mr. Devarkonda said, that, this industry, the beauty of our valuations is such that no two valuations are same. So we have always been evolving. What valuation, same DCF, which we had done, say, 10 years back, DCF as a methodology, as an input, what we have got, the maturity of inputs, I have seen a significant change. So there is a learning process even after 10, 15, 20 years also. So that's the beauty of the subject for us. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think we all learned. I think the sum and substance is extensive due diligence, detailing, understand thoroughly. Formulas are an output. The input parameters are more important. Understanding them before you use it. And it was good. The panelists have shared their experiences. Audiences have also come up with their thoughts at various points. I think thank you so much, Mr. Vikas, Mr. Subbaraidu, Mr. Devarkonda, and Mr. Rajeshwara. Thank you for your time. I think today you have covered up on a sudden challenge we had on the other speaker, and you have actually guided us on variety of questions. There were many more questions. Mr. Subbarao has cautioned me that try to do as many questions in the beginning of the session. We ended up with only few because that's how the questions are. And
no, but you have done 50%. That's a great job.
Yeah. 50%, exactly. Also, the challenge is as a moderator, I have a challenge. If I don't if we don't understand the essence of that question, there's no point in going to the next question. That's where we were also stuck. And thank you so much for all of you. And I hope you all have a great weekend. Enjoy Saturday, Sunday. Thank you, sir.
Sir, before conclusion, okay, sir, Ganesh,
yes, sir.
Okay, it is a great hearing from you as a moderator, and okay, we are all members are okay. Even they are saying personal also, they are very happy, okay, to have a moderator like you. And thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your moderator this and okay, accepting this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
We will continue this discussion maybe next session or in the month of October. We will again discussion one more and we'll complete this process, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Friends,
Pleasure
I have an announcement to make. Okay, since Bangalore Valuers Association always strives in this line of knowledge sharing, I request volunteers to come for newsletter. Actually, we are very eager to go ahead and distribute, articles or anything which can be captured in a newsletters, but this cannot be possible without volunteers. Please directly message me or our president. Your interest to become a part of the newsletter team. Okay, this will benefit all of us. Okay, and help us in our journey of sharing valuation with all others. Okay.
Thank you, Shilpa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.